In this video, we will be creating automatic pop-ups within Brizy Cloud. An automatic pop-up is a pop-up that appears with certain instructions, so you don't use on click, and we set them with conditions and triggers. To give you a quick idea of an automatic pop-up, I will open this website. You have encountered this many times on almost every website that you visit. You are busy browsing through sites and you come onto a page and you're scrolling, and suddenly there is this pop-up that appears. And these pop-ups can do many things, like in this case, give you a discount, ask you to enter a competition, promote a new product. Sky's the limit what you can put in there. What makes these pop-ups appear? When do they appear? And there's also a next question, where do they appear? Those are conditions and triggers. This is done right inside your website project within Brizy Cloud. This is a Brizy Cloud Pro feature. Close out here and we go back to our Brizy Cloud dashboard, and I'll click on my project to go and set up an automatic pop-up. If you haven't worked with pop-ups before, I highly recommend you watch our pop-up part 1, where we show you how pop-ups work in an on-click fashion within Brizy Cloud, as well as how do you create them with pre-made blocks, and also how do you create them from scratch. So I'm definitely not going to go into those details. If there are some things I'm showing you here that you don't get, it means it was covered in the previous video. So check that one out. To access your in-house automatic pop-ups, you go to the sidebar on the left and to the settings in the top right where you see the hamburger menu. It says CMS, which stands for Content Management System. This will open your project settings as well as your assets. And here in the sidebar, you will see we have pages, blogs, stories, and then pop-ups and alerts. If you are using Brizy Cloud free, you're not going to see this. However, take note that the standalone feature, external pop-ups, is included in Brizy Cloud free, and that will be covered in the next video. Let's click on pop-ups and alerts and see what's going on here. Now, you may ask me, what is an alert? Alert is a type of pop-up, so don't get confused by it. A pop-up is a pop-up. It's something that appears out of nowhere. The queue is here in the bottom, this blue button that says add new pop-up, and we click on that. You give your pop-up a title, so I will say Halloween discount. This is maybe, and let's call it Halloween discount 2021. And then it will save automatically as a draft. You can already set it here by clicking on the drop-down box and list it as published. And the moment you click Save Now, it will already be a published pop-up. Don't worry, no one's going to see it because you haven't set any conditions yet and you still need to create it. A strange little feature appears here within Brizy. I think it's because it's also included in the other assets like pages and blog. You will see that there's a tab up here, SEO. This is non-functional, so nothing you can do about that. Click back. And now this is where your index will be for all your pop-ups. As you create many pop-ups, they will appear all down here. I want to give you a piece of advice from the beginning. Multiple pop-ups tend to get you in trouble. So for example, if you've created Halloween discount 2021 and that period is over and now you're looking at Black Friday maybe next, remove this one. Don't let it lie there and make it wait to 2022. What you can do with the pop-up though is the content you can save as a save block or even a global block, but don't leave the pop-up here. I've found that if you have all these multiple pop-ups populated here, the website tends to get confused and it messes things up. So let's have a quick look what we've got here. So over here, this is our project, our pop-up. And then we'll have the date when it was created and the type. Not sure if we need that because it's within our pop-ups and alerts folder. To edit it, you're going to go to this little icon here that says edit. And in the event where you want to delete it, you click here on the bin. We are going to set it up, so we need to edit it. And once you click on edit, it's going to take you into the pop-up builder. This is familiar, what you saw in part 1, exactly the same. So to bring in a new pop-up, simply click here on the middle. You can create it from scratch, or if you want to use one of these pre-made ones, you can just grab it from here. And I'll look for that one with the 15% off over here. And my pop-up loads. Of course, the color is different because I'm using a different color scheme. which is connected to this pre-made layout from Brizy Cloud called scripts. The only difference here is going to be your conditions and triggers. You find that within the pop-up settings. So go to the top right, click on the settings, and all the way to the left. Here you will see display conditions appear. This is where the on-click pop-up and the automatic pop-ups differ. Everything else within this builder remains identical between the two. Click on display conditions and it takes you into this dialog box. You can see we have two tabs up here, triggers and conditions. And there are three things that you need to do when you are here. The first one is trigger. A trigger tells us when. When do we want this pop-up to appear? There are a number of triggers here. Some you will use a lot, some you will never use. If you have a little bit more knowledge as to how these work, you can deep dive into them and test each one of them. We'll dive into a few because most of them you probably won't be using, and a few of them you will use all the time. The one that's very popular is this one called on-page load. This means that the pop-up will appear as someone opens the page. What you add here in the right is a value in seconds. So currently, as I load my page, after 1 second, my pop-up will appear. That's a little bit quick. So let's change this to something more manageable, like between 3 to 5 seconds. And you can add even a much longer delay if you want this to appear when somebody really spends a lot of time on your page. But between 3 to 5 for a normal kind of promotional pop-up is a good time. Let's click on save. And then we'll just close this. I'll update it here and click on preview so you can see how that's going to work. Our page loads and then we start counting from 1, 2, 3, and there we go. Now you understand automatic pop-ups. This is the trigger. When should it appear? Let's leave it open and then we go back into the builder and we look at the other conditions. Right? Display conditions, on page load, set it in seconds. You find on click, and then here you will set how many times clicks have happened on this page. So if a person has clicked on something, then the pop-up appears. So let's put here 2, save. So we expect the pop-up to appear after 2 clicks. Update here, go to the front and reload. Right, so it's important that we don't expect the pop-up to appear after 3 seconds. We've removed that. What we do expect it to do is to appear as I click once, twice, and there we go. And see, I can click anywhere on the page. It doesn't have to be a call to action or a specific button for that matter. That is the on click. Go again to the settings, display conditions, and we look at after inactivity. You've experienced this. You're on a page, you start doing something else, and suddenly the pop-up appears. This is often to convince people who are hesitating. Hey, why are you hesitating? Why don't you do A, B, or C? The idea is that the pop-up will appear after an amount of seconds when the cursor hasn't moved. Again, I will put 3 here, 3 seconds. We'll save it. Update. Go to the front, refresh. And as long as I move my cursor and as long as I'm scrolling, this pop-up will not appear. All right, so I'm scrolling, and now I stop to answer the phone. It starts counting 3 seconds, and voila, there it is, right? So that is after inactivity, also a very popular one. Next display condition is going to be on-page exit intent. This is one of my favorites. This happens when the person is planning to go to another page or to another site. We call it on-page exit intent. Click Save. I'll just save it again to the pop-up and reload the page. And how will this work? And Brizy Cloud will know that anytime you move your cursor to the top outside of the viewport when you want to exit. So it's kind of like, hey, you want to leave this page? Let me tell you something before you go. We go back into the builder. Let's see what else do we have here under display conditions. We have no other pop-up, number off, current date, you can set it by date, where it came from, based on an operating system, based on whether you are using a mobile or a tablet. So you can set different pop-ups for different responsive devices. For me, though, those guys that I just showed you are the ones that you will be using most of the time. But wait, you can also do this in a different number of ways. For example, let's say you put on click and you put 3 clicks, but you are concerned the person is not going to click. Then you can add a second one here and you will add, let's say, on page exit intent, just to make sure that this pop-up will appear at some case. If the person spends some time on the page, or if they don't click on anything and they want to exit, it will appear. Triggers is when. That's very important to remember. Remember, I told you there are 3 things here. The second one is also under triggers, and that's this option here. Trigger pop-up only once. By default, it's deactivated. This means that if you go to a website and you load a page, the pop-up will appear. If you go to another page, it will appear again. If you go back to the previous page, it will appear again. Have you ever been on a site like that? You just want to throw it out, right? It's extremely annoying and it totally actually can ruin what it's all about. I know that you want the pop-up to really get people to buy into whatever you're selling them, but when you are that eager, you actually alienate people. And I cannot stand a site that's not in charge of their pop-ups. This function is deactivated. Why? Because as we tested on the front end during setting it up, we need it to appear every time, otherwise we don't know whether it works or not. The moment though you go live with it, it's highly recommended that you switch it on to make sure that your visitor doesn't get this pop-up each and every time and every page they visit. So remember, this is your second part in setting up a pop-up. Activate this unless you want to annoy and alienate your visitors. You make it appear all the time. There may be a few situations where you want to deactivate this and leave it off. And that's when you have like a menu or something at the bottom, a bar, an announcement bar that you need to appear there all the time. In those cases, it will appear, but it won't really function as a pop-up, more as an alert. That's why it's probably called pop-ups and alerts. So we did the first one, which is your triggers. The second one is how often. And the third one is the conditions. Before you go to conditions, let's just delete this one and leave on page exit intent. Before we go to conditions, save. I think it's what I found. It's better to save here before you go to conditions, just to lock it in. Conditions will tell you where do you want these pop-ups to appear. And your first reaction will be, well, on my site. And that's why the first condition is set for you. You don't have to set it. Include all, which means my entire site. If you go to the drop-down, you will see you can only put it on your blog, only on your categories for your blog, or only on your pages. And when I select pages, you will see I now have the option to choose specific pages on which I want it to appear. If you want this pop-up to only appear, for example, on the Contact Us page, you can do so and click Save. Let's put it back to all, and then you have another option to add a new display condition, but instead of include, you click on it to exclude. For example, you want it to appear across your site, but not on your blog pages. So it will appear on everything else, but not your blog pages, and you can even select specific blog pages. Of course, let's delete this. You can include specific pages, like here's the portfolio, add a new one, and this one will be my about. Now the pop-up will only appear on my portfolio pages and my about pages. I'll put this back on all, save it, and we're okay here. And now because I'm done, I'm going to activate trigger pop-up only once, save it, close, update. Now from here, we can go back to our asset manager up here in the top left, and we can go back to our pages to edit our pages. And later on, if we want to create more pop-ups or make changes to this pop-up, we simply select pop-ups and alerts again, and that brings us into the pop-ups and alerts asset manager. To exit, go to the bottom left, go to Dashboard, and this takes us back to the Brizy Cloud dashboard. In the next video, we are going to talk about external pop-ups. Again, external pop-ups in terms of the builder is exactly what you've seen now in the first two videos. The difference is that if I go here and I click on pop-ups, you will be creating your external pop-up, well, outside of the website. And you can use it on any page you want. You get a URL with it, and you even get a code that I will show you how you can insert it on your WordPress website.